Thank you. Hello. Thank you. Sorry. Hey, guys. We're going to get started in a couple minutes here. We're waiting on some committee members. If you are here and you are interested in speaking on House Bill 268, if you'd please make your way to the front. We have a sign-up sheet and get your name on there. And go ahead and grab your seat, and we'll get started in about 2 or 3 minutes here. So at ease for a second. All right, everybody, this is your 30-second warning here. Again, reminder, if you are here today and you'd like to speak to House Bill 268, please head to the front and sign the piece of paper there.
I'm going to move that to the podium whenever.
Yeah. We just had an excellent question. If you sign the piece of paper, does that obligate you to speak? No. And in fact, you get brownie points with the chair if you do not speak. But no, in all honesty, we want to hear from everybody. So put your name down. If someone says what you wanted to say, no obligation to speak. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and get started here. We're going to start, as we always do, with a word of prayer. And I've asked Representative Rice to my right if you would please open us up in prayer.
Thank you, Chairman. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for this day. I pray that you would bless the work that we are doing in keeping our children safe. And I pray that the words of our mouth and the meditations of our heart will be acceptable in your sight. And please bless this meeting. In your name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Representative. We are going to start our meeting the way we always start our meeting, and I got to give a hat tip to former Education Committee Chair who taught me this, Chairman Brooks Coleman. If we have any students in the audience, would you please raise your hand and be recognized? Give them a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Students, this is why we are here. We are here for you. Any teachers in the audience here today? Raise your hand. Teachers, I've said it before, best part of my day is when I leave my kids with you, so thank you. I would ask everyone in the audience if you would please turn off your cell phones. I don't want them to be a distraction. That was inside. Somebody got it. All right. I want to start first and foremost recognizing our committee chair, Chairman Irwin, who, when he was first appointed chair by the Speaker, set a pretty clear direction for what he wants out of our Education Committee. He wants this committee to be about safety, literacy, and good policy. And I'll never forget, he put safety first. And if any of you are routine visitors of this committee here, you'll hear us talk about safety a lot. And we've done a lot, but we can do more. And I am grateful for Representative Persinger, your leadership in bringing us this legislation. And I look forward today to a very substantive and productive dialogue. I want to hear from everybody. We've set the meeting 1 to 4. I got to warn y'all, I did have varsity for lunch, so I hope to last till 4, but I want to hear from everybody. But this is no more important topic than I can think about right now than talking about school safety. And so, Chairman, thank you for your leadership on this issue. Thank you, Representative Persinger, for bringing us this bill. And, sir, the floor is yours. You're live.
Thank you, Chairman Hilton, members of the committee. Today I bring before you HB 268, LC 492248S for your consideration. As y'all all know, our Bexar County community and Appalachia High School suffered an unimaginable tragedy on September 4th, 2024. We lost 4 members of our community, beloved teachers Coach Ricky Aspinwall and educator Christina Irami, and treasured students Mason Skirmahorn and Christian Angulo. While our hearts remain heavy, various agencies and members of this legislature have been collaborating to draft measures aimed at preventing such tragedies in the future, with the goal of ensuring that all Georgia's schools are safe places for learning and growth. With that being said, House Bill 268 codifies the definitions for a student's critical records and requires the transferring of students' entire academic and disciplinary record to be sent to the receiving school system within 5 days. Now, as soon as the request is made, the student is conditionally enrolled, and if those records aren't received within 5 days, there's a provision that the child receives a behavioral screening assessment that would be designated by DBHDD. And there are also outlines in there to allow parents and guardians to request those records for review to make sure they're accurate, and if they don't feel they're accurate, there's a dispute procedure in place. HB 268 also engages GMA to continue their help. Right now, there's a lot of schools, Linda will be able to tell us how many currently have behavior threat assessment teams in place, and they offer training for these teams right now, but it's not a mandate. So this bill is mandating that we create a statewide structure and that the school systems create these behavioral threat management teams and systems and roll that into their school safety plans that's reported to GMA annually. There's also a change to the terroristic threats as a threat to a school to terroristic threat law, so that it increases penalties for those threats. And there's procedures in that to whether it's validated as a credible threat or not. And lastly, this bill creates a qualified mental health coordinator, and there's tiers based on population of how many mental health coordinators will be assigned to a system. And it also creates grants to fund those qualified mental health coordinators. And they'll be in charge of helping the local school system to identify and facilitate interventions with students with or at risk for mental health concerns. That's just a brief overview, and I'd like to turn it back over to you, Chairman Hilton, and see if we have any questions.
Thank you, Representative. In my opening comments, I failed to acknowledge you, the chairman, but most importantly, the House Speaker, Speaker John Burns, who has absolutely made school safety one of his very top priorities. And I'm grateful for the work the Speaker and his leadership team has done in traveling pretty much to every single corner of this state to listen to educators, superintendents, administrators, students, teachers, anybody who will listen. And so I know this work and what you've presented us today is the culmination of really 6 to 9 months of work and listening sessions. So thank you to you, Chairman, and the Speaker for just a tremendous amount of work. With that, I know you've got 2 folks with you now. I'll open it to either of you if you've got anything to add to his comments. If not, I will open it up to questions from the committee. Don't mess with perfection. I love it. Okay. All right. I've got, so committee, this is the time to ask your questions. And then after some questions, we'll transition to comments from the public. And so with that, I saw the first light to my right, number 27.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative, for this bill, and appreciate your efforts and your hard work and listening to others. I think we don't listen enough, and people I've talked to, you've listened not just from your community members in Barrow, but from around the state and really the nation. So I just want to commend you for that. Can you kind of briefly walk us through, or one of you three kind of walk us through, let's say a new student comes into the school system, whether it's out of state or in state, if that matters. I'm not sure if it does matter. What kind of happens when they come in and you do the assessment, kind of just a brief overview of that process? A new student coming in.
As far as if
Like
there was
records coming over, they don't have records yet. First day there, they show up. You're waiting on records.
right, so they're there under conditional enrollment, waiting on records, and if we don't receive those records in 5 days, then the school could ask for a behavioral assessment so that we're comfortable that we know this child's mental state as early as possible so we can get them services.
Okay, and you're still leaving up to local control of how they do that, as in coming in like central office to register, or the schools, you register straight at the school?
Absolutely, yeah, there's still local control all
decision.
throughout the bill. Everybody has their safety plans, their behavioral threat management plans, all that's still local controls and how they currently operate with their records.
So you've been able to keep this massive bill, the state bill, and still keep a lot of local control as well, because they know their community's better than the state does at our
Absolutely.
our level. That's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. We're going to go to my extreme right, Floor Leader Wade with a question.
There was no pun intended there,
Extreme right.
my friend. Just kidding. Thank you for this bill. Would you mind pointing out to me if there is some clarity on the difference between a transfer student from within the state versus without the state? I want to make sure. And is that process that you just described to my friend's question, is it the same 5 days from whence they transfer in state or out of state?
Yes, the timing's the same, and
Okay.
if obviously if we don't get them, then they'd go potentially under that assessment just to get clarification.
Okay, that's the meat of what I want to make sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Down here to my left, number 4, Representative Olalilie.
Great job,
It's close.
Thank you, Chair. Representative, thank you for bringing the bill. I wanted to get a little bit more clarity on the handling of a child or a student's confidential information. Who would have access to the information at the school? How would that information be maintained and preserved to ensure that only relevant stakeholders at the school have access to that private information. If you could just kind of provide a little bit more color on that, that would be helpful.
Sure. So pretty much exactly like it is now, where there's a hierarchy of access based on need. The teacher that has that child in the class would have access to that information. Administration, people at the board office. So not everyone in the system has access to every student's record. So it would be a hierarchy based on services rendered.
Okay. Quick follow-up. And so currently, I know that this bill doesn't go into that specific hierarchy and kind of providing detail on who would have access. You're simply putting it in the hands of folks on the ground to kind of do as they've been doing in safeguarding and protecting and maintaining that information. Or you're saying that's okay and you're fine with the way?
Correct, and I'll let Brock Wilson with Case Health Solutions, he administers Infinite Campus for the state. I'll let him answer if he'd like to elaborate.
Yeah, and I just quickly asked because we're talking about the transfer of like volumes in some potential cases of confidential information. So just wanting to make sure that we feel good with this bill safeguarding that.
Sure. So obviously every school system is under FERPA compliance as well. So those educational records, this would fall under that same category. There's FERPA training in place for most districts at least. The safeguarding of that information is of the utmost importance. However, the availability of it is also extremely important. So getting it in the hands of the individuals as quickly as possible prevents future happenings.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I am not seeing any other lights. I jinxed myself. Number 25 to my right, Representative Chairman Jones.
Mr. Chairman, it's okay if I do a follow-up to the representative's question?
Yeah.
My apologies. I don't expect necessarily a full answer on this, but maybe it's something that's been contemplated. As I've spoken with law enforcement, who I put a significant amount of weight on in terms of their ability to tell us how to help make sure we keep our schools safe, one of the things that I see is this data transfer. Of course, I'm absolutely confident we will handle the privacy matters on that. But I'm wondering, with this almost several terabytes of data, is there an algorithmic view that we can provide for each student to be able to give some level of indication in terms of, I'll say, degree of, I'll say, propensity around doing certain violent acts?
Obviously, that is a subjective algorithm. However, we already do it for response to intervention. We already do it for 504. We already do it in many at-risk scenarios outside of behavioral items here. Personally, I believe that it can be done via early warning signals. I don't think a student's historical behavior is enough of an indicator to let you know that there are issues. Transiency of the child, home life, attendance, grades are inclusive in the indicators of possible issues of this variety, but historical behavior falls in there as well.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to go down to my left here. Representative Wilkerson with a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess I'm trying to understand the database and how a student might get in there. And you mentioned like home life, different things. Can you kind of explain a situation where a student might get into the database and how do they get out?
Thank you for that question, sir. So the bill speaks to two forms of information sharing. One is the already established student information systems which exist in the state that Brock can speak to. This other database that is in the bill is for students who have done something that they're on the radar and they're a subject of concern. And so we don't need that information, which could be quite sensitive in their educational record. The idea is for it to be in a protected CJIS protected system that's at the FBI standards, and then the point of this repository is so that we can, as state agencies, if a school or a sheriff comes to us with a student of concern, we can look across and see if there's any other information that would help that district. It would be by request and protected information in that system. So that would be one way a student would be entered in the S3 database. So the regular student information system, if a kid causes a disruption during lunch or gets in a fight, that's not going to get you, on the S3 system. It's going to have to be the student intervention, the student wellness teams that are in the schools working with law enforcement, raising a child of concern that they feel like they need additional state resources. The other scenario could be that a federal agency or a state agency has a tip about that individual and wants to make sure that the school is aware of it. And to the earlier question, that would be even more what I call compartmented to a select group of people that would have access to that information, not available to all teachers, not even to all administrators.
So, one follow-up question?
Yes.
So I guess the initial comment was that the teachers would have access to this because they're teaching the student, but you're saying that there would be levels of concern. So I'll give you an example. A student is a big hunter, let's say, and they have a lot of weapons, and they're on social media. They're proud of it. Their family's big hunters. The police go to his, and some kid hears him say something. They go to the house. They investigate. They find there's no cause for any concern necessarily, but there are a ton of weapons in the house because I know a lot of families that own firearms. Will that student be in the database because someone has raised a concern, or because it's unconfirmed they would not be in the database? Or is that still an open question?
So I'll answer that question in two parts, sir. So one, I just want to clarify, there's two separate systems under discussion in the bill. One is the student information system, that if you have children, you log on to these systems to see your child's schedule. Every parent has access to it. They have different access controls, and Brock can tell you all about that. Teachers have a different set of access. They can see the grades and attendance and whatnot. Administrators see a higher level of information. That's completely separate from S3. So just how we do everything in this state, we're a home rule state. No one knows our children better than the people who interact with them in their community. So if a decision is made after the scenario you just presented that, well, we feel good about that, then it wouldn't come to our attention. But if there were questions about it, then there would be an opportunity for law enforcement or to enter that person in the system. So a lot of this is going to be case by case, and we want it to be because we don't want, these are children and these are human beings. And so all of these decisions should be made by humans who know them and care about them, and not by an algorithm.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Persinger, I failed to have your two folks introduce themselves. If y'all would give your name, organization, that would be great. Thank you.
Right. Other than being a friend of Representative Persinger, my name is Linda Criblay, Deputy Director of Homeland Security with GMA.
Perfect.
My name is Brock Wilson. I am CEO of K-12 Solutions Group. We are the Southeastern Channel partner for a student information system called Infinite Campus. Here in the state of Georgia, for those of you that may know, there are roughly 1.74 million public school students. We hold records for approximately 1.25 million of those in our system. So the things that I was referring to earlier when we talk about inter and intra-district transfers, both inter and intra-state, we have that information available on a readily accessible platform currently, which Ms. Linda and I have already discussed how we could potentially tap into that. To further something she said earlier, the S3 database to me looks much more like a law enforcement database. I don't keep that level of data. However, granting access to the teachers to initiate the referral, to start the risk assessment, the threat assessment, things like that. That's where I feel it is imperative at that level. If we're allowing them to do it at an academic level, what is different from a behavioral level? They see the kid much more than, say, the school administrator. So, sir, if I may, I think it needs to start at that teacher level, obviously with a limited set of access to what they can see from the overall law enforcement view. However, they need to be able to initiate the request for said assessment.
Thank you. One more important introduction. Representative, I'm not sure if you're aware, Valentine's Day is tomorrow. If I'm
Fully aware.
Yeah. Can you please introduce the woman on the front bench there?
So my wife, Jenny Persinger, is the Data Assessment and Accountability Director for Bear County Schools, and with her is Chief of Staff Dr. Matt Thompson.
She is beat red right now, too, so thank you. All right, I'm going to go to my left. Representative Glaze with a question.
Yes, and first of all, I want to say thank you so much for bringing this bill, and thank you for allowing me to ask a quick question. The age is 6 to 16. I'm trying to figure out why we stopped at 16 and the average student is in school until they're 18. And then I have one more question after that.
I don't think we stopped at age, did we? I believe it's 6th grade through 12th grade. I don't think there's an age in there. Can you refer?
Yeah, if you have a line reference, that would be good. Yeah.
The other thing is just the cost. What is the cost analysis for the system? It didn't have that. Is there a fiscal note?
No, I think they're still working on that.
Oh, they're still working. Okay. I'll come back to you.
All right, we'll come back. I'm going to go to my right, number 29, Floor Leader Wade.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate it. Just for a little historical reference, would you mind sharing the efforts? I just don't want it to be glossed over because we do have some folks that are new to this process first year. I want you to tell them the effort that went through with your work with Chairman Irwin on connecting with all of the different agencies that are involved in this or that could touch. And then the second question is do we know if there are any school systems in Georgia? I do know that some systems do not send information electronically. I don't know if that is because it's just a common practice or if they're small. And do we have any systems that we don't think have the capacity or capability to do so? I don't know the answer to that question, but I know there's a lot of effort, and I'm sure that school systems want to be able to comply with what we're going to do. I just want to make sure, are we aware of any that just simply do not have that capability? But I think the first part of my question is even more important, the effort that you did with all these different agencies involved.
Sure, yes, greatly appreciate Chairman Irwin's help setting up meetings at conferences with School Board Association, Superintendent Association. Obviously, I've got a pretty direct line to Bear County Schools, so I hear from them often. Just going through the process, knowing, post-incident and as we learn things and going through all that information, meeting with GMA, talking to Brock, literally, and I know there were some meetings I wasn't able to make it, and I know we had a lot of members on the committee in several meetings, so it literally has been from September 4th almost every single day working and reaching out to our community to find out how we can make this better. There could be some issues or concerns with probably smaller systems and the need to help them ramp up to digitize some records. I am aware of a very large school system that shouldn't have any problem doing that, that will not send their records digitally. They decide that the best option is to print them and mail them. So if that's got to go through Palmetto, we could be waiting for a year for a student's records.
Yes, sir.
Do you believe that should this pass, that they would have a clear understanding that if they have the capability to send things electronically in the 21st century, of which we're a quarter of the way through, that they'll comply with that?
We would hope so. That's the intent.
And that's the expectation. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We're going to go Representative Wilkerson to my left with a question.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When it's sent electronically, how is that done? Is it through encrypted, or is that like, say you're getting a loan from a bank, they send you an encrypted file? Is that how you plan on sending electronically or by email?
Well, there's two things. One, in the state of Georgia, we're a local control state. Fully respect that. Each system gets to choose their own local student information system. So how each of the 4 in use in Georgia handles it, I can only speak for the way we handle it from an Infinite Campus perspective. Obviously, we can do a national records transfer from any student that comes across the country to get that information, as well as any other Georgia district that uses Infinite Campus. The Georgia Department of Education collects this data annually and can only give you a historical picture of it. They cannot give you real-time, up-to-date data. However, to answer the question specifically, yes, encrypted, point-to-point connection so that the data is available. So that everybody is aware, and to clarify one thing, a district of ours can't simply say, I want to look at a record of Mr. Irwin's child. The withdrawing district must release that information. So they have to confirm that the student is withdrawing from said district and physically acknowledge that they are releasing those records. The same as putting it in the mail, they have to physically release that record. On our system, the FERPA-controlled information, again, there are many acknowledgments that have to happen before it is released.
Okay, and follow-up question real quick is, I guess this goes back to earlier, is how getting the database. So you were saying, my understanding is there's two different, the school level and then kind of like the law enforcement level. What happens in a situation, which is going to happen, I think has happened, where law enforcement looks at it, says, maybe not, but the school realizes it's an issue, but because those two are not connected, that what may seem like a possible is probably a probable based on what you're seeing, but you don't know what else is out there. Is there any concern that because of the subjective nature of how child information gets shared with the teacher, because to your point, a teacher may say something's wrong, but they won't know what it is because they haven't seen the background information. And I'll give you another example. Back several years ago, we had this problem with DFACS where the information would go to DFACS, but it never came back down. So we changed the law to say within 5 days, whether it's confirmed or unconfirmed, after it's resolved, you have to let the district know. Is that something that should be incorporated? And I don't know how it is because you don't want every accused kid being in the database.
Sure. So I think that is where the behavioral threat assessment management teams in the local systems come in play, because that is a multidisciplinary team with teachers, counselors, local law enforcement, all those people that you're talking about that should be meeting and talking every time there's an instance, or weekly, however they'd set up it. They're the local behavioral threat management system that discusses this and makes the evaluation whether this threat needs to be escalated or not.
Thank you, Representative. We're going to go to my right, Chairman Rick Jaspers with a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for all your work on this. I know it's been a load, for sure. I think the threat assessment that you just described is the game changer in all this. I think that'll be number one. But I'm looking at Section 6. You jump over there. I just want to make sure that I understand this part.
What line are you on?
I'm just on Section 6 in general. So is this the part that's going to help break down the barriers that are present between the different agencies that may have information on a child, and because I think we'll see that that is the big issue sometimes. I think between schools, I think what I've read here so far that really addresses it, but the information that may be in BDHDD or DFACS or within local law enforcement, is this the part that helps to break that down, to get that going? We're
really saying that all these agencies need to communicate together.
But it doesn't statutorily say they have to. It looks like it's creating a process. Is that true?
Yes.
That's the way I look at it. I don't, certainly not an attorney, but that's how we're doing it. You being the data guy, was that what we're seeing here? Okay. I'm good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Again, you and I sat in a lot of these listening sessions. I mean, that was the big frustration of a lot of folks is the silos that government sits in and government not communicating and not getting timely information. And as we diagnosed everything that took place in September, that was many issues. That was one of them. And so, again, thank you for addressing that in this legislation. I'm going to go to my right with Representative Cox.
Thanks for the bill. Question, Infinite Campus. So you said roughly 1.25 million students. Is that what you were saying?
Active current year students or that we serve on our software platform. Yes, sir.
Okay. What's the greatest data breach y'all have had in Infinite Campus in the state of Georgia, and when did that happen, and has it been solved?
We had a malactor in a central Georgia district that accessed and gained I don't remember the exact quantity. It's about a 1,500 student district inside the state of Georgia. That's the worst one that I can recall. It was a singular instance. It happened at the same malactor acted in another state and gained access via the Google admin side into that district. And being that they were linked accordingly, that's how they gained that access. As far as what they could see, there was some PII information available. There was student enrollment history in there. But again, the things that we hold versus what GMA would hold from the law enforcement side. I mean, we're not talking, arrest records and things like that in Infinite Campus. We're talking grades and student address and what grade levels they've been in for what years. So that's the worst one that I can recall, sir.
Okay. And I know in a county near where I represent, I know that they had a data breach with a cyber attack on different levels. And I also know in Forsyth County where we are, they have an exceptional cyber team to protect the data, but I also know that third grade kids and fifth grade kids are being targeted from all over the globe.
Yes, sir.
And my greatest concern of all of this is that data being compromised for a lot of many reasons that I just want to protect these kids, and obviously as all of us here do. And do we have the proper cybersecurity over this data that's going to be shared amongst all these agencies? That's a big concern of mine.
Sure. Cybersecurity is a concern for everybody. We spend millions upon millions every year trying to, ensure that we are as safe as possible. Every day is different, and so it's always a constant battle with cybersecurity, but we do have a full team in place. From the Infinite Campus perspective, we go through SOC2 audits every year. We're federally audited because we do business with the Bureau of Indian Education, lots of different things on that side. I'm not asking you, and I don't think the representative is either, to house any additional data in the student information system. The interconnectivity of the current silos that exist is utterly important to accomplish this, and that could be done in a safe and secure manner with cooperation between Department of Education, Homeland Security, other law enforcement agencies.
All right, we're going to take another question to my right, Chairman Todd Jones.
Just a follow-up to Representative Cox's question. If you don't know, it's okay, but do the APIs currently exist between all these governmental agencies and also the private groups, the private 3 or 4 companies that you referred to on the SIS side?
Governmental agencies I can't speak to. On the SIS side, to the level of data that we're referring to here now, no, the APIs don't currently exist in the state of Georgia. In other states, there are systems that there's a state directly to our north that recently incorporated a statewide student information system. They utilize everything consistently, and at any point in time, I think the representative's 5-day approach here might be a little more lengthy than it should be. That is available in other locations through common APIs that exist in other states. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick follow-up.
Please.
I do agree that having 181 different back office systems in our state is an absolute challenge when I look at this document. I understand and appreciate home rule, But to the point that you're making, very eloquently and very, I'll say,
carefully,
gently, you're absolutely right. And that's where my concern may be to Chairman Jasper's point, which I think was excellent, as was Representative Cox's, is between the federal agencies, the state agencies, and then between the 181 having different SISs, it seems as if we're asking for, I'll say, connectivity to be created, and we're going to have to be looking at it, and this is not an appropriations meeting, so let me be clear, that's Chairman Dubnik's area, but we're going to have to be speaking to how these are going to be moved electronically, to the point that Representative Wilkinson made in terms of cybersecurity, because of the fact that encryption alone we can't, obviously achieve without proper APIs. So what I hear you saying is right now we're fragmented and we don't have the connectivity, or I'll say the highways built between all of these different systems.
May I respond?
Please.
I wish it were just 181 these days. Unfortunately, it's 234 when you count in the state charters.
True.
The olden days of 181, we have 174 of those on our system. Between those, we have this interconnectivity pathway already built, if you will. Us working with third parties, government agencies for this information would then be from a centralized store rather than doing it 234 times, if this makes sense. Georgia being local control, again, I fully support that. There are other states that are local control that have state policy about what the common database is going to be. So I don't think a statewide common database in any way interferes with what we know as local control.
Right. One more, sir.
Yes, sir.
Do you, off the top of your head, as a best practice, so looking at, as you're calling it, a common database, a data lake, whatever nomenclature we want to use, a warehouse, is there a state that you point to that you say they do it really well? So if Georgia doesn't have to redo the wheel, but rather such and such state is doing it so well, we should look at that so that we can expedite this, I'll say, highway creation?
No state does it perfectly.
I understand, and I know it's a tough question, but
sure,
a best practice would be great.
North Carolina is currently implementing a statewide solution like this. They have taken a focused approach on how this should work. It would be one that I would model in other locations. State of Delaware is currently trying to do the same thing as well. Montana, South Dakota, Hawaii. I mean, there are other states that have taken this same approach. And again, when you're talking about the threat assessment at your permission to speak freely here, but the lowest paid level individuals in the school districts maintaining this information. So why make it more difficult for them to do that? If you take a common approach, then the Georgia Department of Education could be leaned on more heavily because they would have that data lake you're looking for. And we're then not necessarily asking each LEA to make determinations or early warning indicators from what could be in a common data lake that is, I'll never say real time, but near real time.
Okay, I appreciate that, and thank you for using North Carolina, as they are not part of the SEC, so we're not going to have a problem with them.
Fair enough.
Don't talk SEC football, yeah. All right, guys. Remember, we do have to get to public comment at some point, so I'm going to go. But I do want a thorough vetting of this, and I want to thank the committee. You guys have been asking some excellent questions, so keep it up, because I've learned a lot, and I think the audience has too. Representative Glaze to my left.
Yeah, so we're back to the 6 to 16. I understand that's just in the language. That's a summary definition. But does this stop at 16? And I think we need an understanding of that.
Thank you. No, it does not. The provisions that you're pointing to, and I think I still have those up, but the provisions that you were referring to on the substitute LC 492248S, starting on page 37 and at line 957, that reference to hold on, there's one previous to that. The reference at page 36, line 924, that reference to 16 years old contemplates our compulsory attendance rules, and so this acknowledges that students there's a difference between students who are 16 and under and students who are over 16, according to our compulsory attendance rules. Later in the subsection, and that's that next reference on the following page, it specifically says this should not be construed to limit school systems from reaching out for students who are over 16.
Okay, good.
There's just an acknowledgement that students who are under 16 are subject to compulsory attendance
Okay,
rules.
thank you for clarifying that. Line 1155, it currently reads that procedures for disciplinary actions. Since we are talking 6 to maybe 18, would we not be talking about age-appropriate type disciplinary actions versus just procedures?
Is that a question for the author? Or?
For the author.
Okay.
What line are you on again?
1155.
1155.
In the substitute?
Must have LC
Yeah,
49. I must have the wrong one.
Yeah, with the author, can you please, I'm working off of LC 492248S.
Correct.
Which is committee substitute.
Oh, you know what? We've got several pages that are the same.
Are you missing some page?
Yep. It's 43. Copies.
Did the first letter on some.
Okay.
I'm trying to, what you said was 1150.
So it's 44.
I'm gonna
44.
Page 44.
I'm gonna let y'all work that out real quick.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna go to my right, number 24. Chairman Jaspers.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back to my questions about the sharing of data. I want you to look at line 255. That's, the S3 database, and ensure timely, complete, accurate information that the database shall at a minimum be to receive and share data from all these different people. But I look past that, I don't see anywhere where it makes them share with us.
I'm sorry. All right, guys.
Go ahead.
Pause for a second. You're live.
The looks like the first number has been cut off of your copy, so you reference line 255, and that would be on page 47. It's actually line 1255. So, so if anybody has a full copy, it's going to be 1,255. So
there we go. All right.
Here.
Education,
Live.
we're always learning.
Page
Always
47
learning.
then.
All right.
Found it now. It's easier.
There
when
we
you know
go.
exactly what
All right, so we're going to go line 1255, page 47. Go for it.
So what I'm asking there is that the database shall receive. And I think if we look at, I know the Mental Health Bill 1013 that Chairman Jones and I worked on, that's been the problem, is all of these different people giving you the appropriate information that you need, and there's no, for better or worse terms, a hammer to make them do it. So is there, am I missing that in here, or do I not see the hammer, or just, or the encouragement, or what's the right word? I don't know, but that's just an issue I see. That's what I'm trying to look at.
And I hear what you're saying, and I think probably leaving it up to the agencies and GMA when they create these policies was the thought process, to allow that be the pressure. I know there are some provisions for fines or issues if this data is mismanaged or used inappropriately, but we might not have a heavy enough hammer for all the agencies.
Well, yes, thank you. But I guess I want to make sure that if you needed, or there's information in BDHDD that they have on Rick, they got to give it to you. Right. But I guess at this moment we're asking them, we can get it if you'll give it. And that's just, I see there's a conflict there that I want to make sure, I would like to make sure that they have to do it.
Then we have shalls and not mays.
Well, they have to give it to us. It's just now that we shall get it, we receive it. But I'm of the opinion that because it seems to be a breakdown in, what happens with a child is in this silo, as the chairman said, may not get to us. And I think that's what the essence of the general public wants, is that silo broken down and it get to the threat assessment team or the S3 database that they'll use.
Well, Mr. Chairman, excellent comments. And as we work this bill, maybe if you got a smart gentleman to your right.
She's got something I think she needs.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. Miss Linda. Yep.
Well, thank you, sir. That was a wonderful question. And I want to kind of address some other comments about S3 and just kind of clarify that it is not a law enforcement database. And I think some of the language in here, and I defer to the lawmakers, might be appropriately vague because we're talking about really to share this information. We're talking about very complex laws, FERPA, HIPAA, law enforcement sensitive information. The Sheriff's Association is going to have opinions on this matter. So in my mind, I think we're going to have memorandums of understanding, a lot of attorneys looking at, okay, how do we make this work with the goal of making it work? And GMA is not a law enforcement agency. We are the state's coordinating body, so it would be our job to do the heavy lifting to talk to all of these agencies and encourage them to share, and to the extent allowable by law, and then have all of those cyber security protections that you had mentioned, and that's why we want it at the federal CJIS FBI standard for protection of information. But so I love the idea of shall, but I understand that each of these agencies are going to say, well, we have legal considerations and we need to talk that through, and that's where we got to do the heavy lifting with them to work through those issues.
So I understand that GMA will be the one that's going to will have the responsibility to get BDHD or DHS to create these agreements that make it happen.
Right, and I'll think of the easy example I can think of is we have a great working relationship with GSAC, the Georgia Information Sharing and Analysis Center. They operate our state CSEND program. They share with us already school-related threats. So that's an example of a sharing relationship that's already in place. Could it be expanded? Could there be more? That's a discussion, but we don't have those relationships in place with some of these other agencies, and so we would need to work that out so they're comfortable with it, and that it's all legally compliant, because we understand this is private information on young people.
Certainly.
So, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to tee folks up. I'm going to go 22, 2, and 27. So just be ready to rapid fire as you go here. Number 22, you're live. Representative Rice.
Hi, I just want to thank you for this bill. It's very comprehensive. It's clear that there's been a lot of time, there's been a lot of heart, there's been a lot of research put in this bill, so thank you very much. I just want to gain understanding. One of the primary concerns was for administrators to be able to have access to information as students are transferred in from previous schools, and you were very much addressing that today, so thank you on that. My question is, on the S3 database, that's something that you're currently building, correct? Like, is that something that already exists, or is there an expansion on it that this bill would provide?
It does not currently exist. It would be new.
Okay, and follow-up question to that is, if it does not currently exist and we open it up, is the information will obviously be downloaded as incidences or concerns arise. Will there be a mechanism to download previous history of concerns or records of the student having concerning behavior into that system?
That's a wonderful question, and it would be an additional line of work and perhaps some additional funding to do that. But I think it's absolutely important because we have students in the system that may have presented problems at an earlier age. And so I think it would be worthwhile to ensure that information is there. And we do, the information that we currently have with our information sharing relationship with the GBI, we could certainly input that data. So I think that's incredibly important. And was there a first part to your question I might have missed, or did that cover it?
That covers it. It's just really, I was just curious, is there going to be a way that's going to help administrators know as a new student comes in next year if there's a previous history, and we're kind of jumping on that. And I know that's a lot of data, and how to do that, that's is something that definitely we'll be building up to, but I was just curious about the mechanism on that. So thank you.
Right, absolutely. And I'll just add one point on that the idea behind this is that the local counties, the sheriffs, the superintendents need this information. They can't be blind about the threats that exist in their communities. So we would build it in a way that they don't have to come ask GMA for the information. If a student is resident in that county, the people who have access to that system, it's already built in. If they have a need to know, they will have that data. When the student moves, we will work with that student information number that Godot has for every public school student, and it will move to the new jurisdiction. Our vision is to build that in. Thank you.
Very good. Members, what we're going to do, just to level set, we're going to take 2 more questions. That'll probably get us to the top of the hour here. And then I know a lot of folks have come a long way to testify here. And so we'll hear that testimony. That does not preclude you from asking questions as we go forward and all that. So let's take these next 2, and then I'd like to open it up to hear from those in the audience that have come here. So with that, Representative Wilkerson, your constituents are getting their money's worth today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a very important bill, and thank you for your work on it. To follow up to the Chairman Jasper's question, I know with the Safe Schools Act, we've had a number of conversations over the last year due to the newness of superintendents, or due to the desire of local districts. Shall did not necessarily mean shall. I meant if they chose to do it. Under this, by saying shall coordinate, are we still opening up to that GMA is going to be kind of in the middle, saying we can't force them to do this, that what we're passing today may not do what we intend to do unless we put some teeth behind what we're doing today? Because, maybe everybody's turning their school safety plans in, but I think that, yeah, exactly. And that's a shall as well. And that's a very important part of this, because I would think we would take those school safety plans and then help develop where we're going here. But if we haven't done the best practices from those school safety plans, that first shall puts us at a distinct disadvantage. I just want to make sure we're not creating more shalls that don't mean anything. I don't think that was a question. I don't know if that was a question.
No, it's an excellent question and comment. I will say with any new law, there's going to be education, and we have turnover with our superintendents, with our teachers, and our SROs and chiefs of police. We saw an incredible improvement in compliance with the law this year than we did last year. Was it 100%? No, but I think it was around 85% for intruder alert drills, closer to 90 for school safety plans. So that's good. I mean, that's an A and a B minus, I guess. And so I defer to the lawmakers, but I can live with a shall, and then let's see how this works out, and if there's a need for more, a harder hand over time. But what we've seen is just incredible enthusiasm for this concept of behavioral threat assessment. And I have to put in a plug for this. Behavioral threat assessment management is a prevention-based model of approaching at-risk students. The goal is to provide them positive interventions so that they have help before they make a life-changing mistake. And the schools seem to be receptive to that. There's counties in our state that already have very robust BTAM programs in place. Oconee County is one of them. And so I'm optimistic that people will see the value in this.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go to number 27 to my right, Representative Townsend.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Question again, Representative. If you look at line 494.
Can you give the page number?
Page 19, numbers 2 and 3. Just that section talks about if they don't have the proper paperwork, I think, documentation, day 10, they could be dismissed from enrollment or withdrawn from school. I don't know if that's the intent or if it's something they would rather go to kind of alternative type setting instead. I know in the past if the kids didn't have the right documentation, that was a possibility to do that. Yes, sir.
We've got, hold on 2 seconds.
Mr. Chairman, that concept actually exists currently in Georgia law, that the receiving school has the option or the opportunity to effectively dismiss an enrolling student if the records do not eventually find them. So this is a carryover. Because there's so many changes to this part of the code, we just repealed the existing law and we are reenacting with all of the new provisions, but that's actually a carryover from the existing law.
That's a good question.
Okay.
Good question. Well, Chairman, I see 25 and 26. 25. Go for
25.
it. Yep. You're live.
Representative Townsend, is it okay if I ask you?
Yes.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I respect that it's an existing statute, but if we're going to reopen, is there a question that do we want to be able to provide to the receiving school the ability to make the determination, hey, if they don't get this paperwork within a certain period of time, we do not want to, I think I can speak for everyone, we don't want to somehow deprive that child of an education while this is occurring. Do we want to provide the school districts with the appropriate alternatives? And we have several ex-superintendents up on the dais right now and people, BOE members. I can't speak to it in statute language, but is it alternative schools? Is it virtual schools? Is it a series of different options so that these children can be educated while we're still handling what is occurring with the representative's bill regarding the receiving information that they are expected to get based on the statute, or the soon to be?
I think the provision for, if they don't receive the records in 5 days, the provision for the behavior assessment would come into play there as well.
Correct, and I absolutely, based on the reading, I agree. The question becomes is to the representative's question, at 496 we're talking about dismissal. Do we just want to rephrase to, and again, forgive me, I'm not leg counsel, but as opposed to a dismissal, is it provide the receiving school with the option to provide, options for the child, including but not limited to alternative schools, virtual schools, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, while the assessment's going on, to then place them where it's appropriate? Again, Mr. Chair, I'm not trying to hijack or rewrite the bill live, but it is a question.
This is, audience, you're seeing the legislative sausage making at work. I'm going to refer to my lawyer.
Yeah, and there'd be no reason not to. If that was the policy will of the committee, there'd be an easy change to make in the bill.
All right.
Yeah. So, Mr. Chair,
at the appropriate time, why don't you work up language, and if the author is amenable to it, let's consider that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Y'all, man, I love this. All right. See, I'm a pushover with my young daughter and y'all. Let's go to my extreme right.
Very far right.
Very far right.
To our chair in the center. I only
Did you
would
bring in
ask,
just to make that joke?
I would only, this is just an opinion, and I'd like to discuss with some of the folks like Chairman Irwin and the sponsor. And to Todd's question is, in our conversations around the state, one of the solutions to that period while we're waiting for results or transfer information is, can the student utilize the Georgia Cyber Academy as kind of the first initial option if those others that he mentioned, just throwing that out for that dialogue when you have it, I'm just opening that up to those folks to communicate as that component. So for Todd to consider Georgia Cyber Academy as maybe the first initial, until that other stuff, all that other things can guide which might be the best setting for that student. So just
I like that. I like that.
Thanks.
Number 26 I see lit up. Chair Lady Ballard, Queen of Education.
Okay. Thank you so much for bringing this bill. I have one question, and I only ask this because I know that it has happened. Is there any mechanism in here, I'm not seeing it, it might be in here, to deal with school districts or individual schools that just don't enter discipline data into this portal, or who purposely delete data, that discipline data on a student? Is there anything in here to deal with those?
I would think that the current PSC procedures that handle ethics for certified teachers would be in play there. If they maliciously or intentionally, by omission or doctoring of those records, that would be where we would handle that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Lady. One last question to my right. Representative Cox.
So some of the thought was the bigger hammer, and how do we do that with all these different thought processes. I have a recommendation, if you'll hear it, and it's to properly incentivize school systems to transfer data, and somehow I think it's going to land in the appropriations world. But if we can really encourage them and reward them for doing a great job of sharing this data, I think that's a home run, because if we're always penalizing and we're policing, if you will, over them, let's get this as transparent as we can. Protect the data. I mean, that's a big deal. But I don't know, have I seen is there anything in here on incentivizing school systems to share, or agencies?
No, but I'm open for recommendations.
It's time, committee. Thank you all so much. Representative, I don't know how many bills you've carried, but this one is significant, and you've handled yourself with grace, demonstrating leadership. It's not easy sitting in that hot seat there. Kudos to you. You are handled this like a seasoned veteran. Give him a round of applause. Now, he hasn't passed his bill yet, so don't applaud too early. Hold on now. Hold on. All right. Here's what we're going to do. I've got 18 folks signed up to speak. There is a list right there, I believe, on the podium. If you have not signed up on a list that looks like this and you want to speak, now is your time to go to the podium and sign up to speak. As I mentioned, I've got 18, and we've got this room to 4 o'clock. That's 2 hours. I'm not a math major, but if everybody talks for more than 10 minutes, we're going to be here all night. So I'm not going to put a timer on us right now. But if you could try to keep comments in the 3 to 5 minute range, that would be greatly appreciated. Brevity is your friend here in the Education Committee. But with that said, I want to hear every good idea that you, the audience, have. And since I'm a chair, I can call the rules here. And here's what I'm going to do. I've got a number of people, adults, but man, I love my students. And when students come down and they want to sign up and talk, guess what? You go to the top of my list. So, students, I'm putting you on the spot. I hope you don't mind, Miss, and please forgive me for the names here. Anna Jean Lovett, lower. You're up to bat.
Hello.
No, hold on. Let me turn on your live. Go for it.
Hello, my name is Anna Jean Lower, and I'm a junior in high school at Dunwoody High School in DeKalb County. First of all, in this House bill, I would like to say that I believe the establishment of training systems for administration in the educational communities to assist students with mental health issues and students in crisis is really beneficial to the students in the state of Georgia. However, I would like to bring attention to the concern that comes with including psychological evaluations being required in the inclusion of student records to schools. And I would like to ask for more clarification on that and acknowledgement of the ramifications that come with a lack of specificity in the language, and that was line 416 in section 8. And I would also like to put an emphasis on student security and privacy. With these student records, I would just like for us to think about what including certain sources of information can do to our students. Specifically in the state of Georgia, we have a school to prison pipeline, and I want us to focus on the nature of disciplinary actions that occur in a time of development for growing students that are trying to become members of the Georgia society. And finally, I'd just like to say that the state of Georgia has a duty to students to protect them and respect student privacy while doing so. Thank you.
Anna Jean. And this is for the audience, too. If I like you, made a good comment. I got some Reese's here. Anna Jean, if I was half your smart at your age, I'd be in the White House right now. You are amazing, and thank you. Excellent comments. Sophie Biggs.
Hi. Okay, so my name is Sophie Biggs. I'm also from Dunwoody High School in DeKalb. And I really wanted to focus on Section 2 of the bill with the mental health consultants that will be added to school systems. I think that's so important, and I think it's really important for every student to have access to mental health services because a lot of the times they aren't able to get them by themselves. And so by providing them with school systems, I think that is a very good solution. However, I do want to emphasize the clarity that is needed to students with mental health, with things related to mental health, because a lot of the times I have a lot of friends who do not like to talk to school counselors because they don't know what the school counselors will do, or they don't know like what is confidential and what's not. So I think that with the mental health consultants, it's really important to communicate with students like what they're there for and what they can do and what they can tell their parents, because that's very important. Yeah, so I think that overall, more funding and more mental health services is incredibly important for the prevention of security threats like you've been talking about, and to help students in general. But clarity is needed with students, and more communication with students is needed for them to be as effective as they need to be. Thank you.
Perfect. Beautiful. We've got one more student, but we've got a group that has a hard stop here. I can think of no better group to bring. I mean, there's a lot of great groups, but Georgia Sheriff's Association. I don't think I've got a name here. Terry Norris. Am I getting that right?
I'm not Terry Norris. I'm not as handsome as him.
Oh, you're a good-looking man, don't you?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to defer to the two sheriffs, if that's okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for your service.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. My name's Ron Freeman. I'm the sheriff of Forsyth County, and with me is Sheriff James Hale of Oconee County.
If you could, I'm sorry, speaking to the mic.
Yeah, sorry,
you're good.
A little bit. Couple of things, and first and foremost, thank you for taking up school safety. It's been my mantra for 8 years on school safety. I will say this, there's a lot of great things in this bill, but also some things that concern me. And when I say that, I met with my delegation, and many of them are here today. So Representative Cox, Representative Jones, Representative Jasper, I can get you. He's only my representative. Look, on a couple of issues in particular, if I can say, look, I run one of the largest school resource officer programs in the state of Georgia for a sheriff's office. I have almost 60 deputy sheriffs assigned to our school system. I'm also very blessed that I have an outstanding relationship with my superintendent, with my Board of Education in our schools, and they are equally invested in. And I realize standing here today that I come from a very affluent county that has the resources to do things that some counties do not have the ability to do. One of the things we do that is vitally important is we started, you're talking about here, kudos to what the young lady said and kudos to you on mental health, providing more mental health care. We have what we call student advocacy specialists. There's 11 of those in our school system. I would tell you they're crisis counselors to deal with kids who are in their worst place and are in true need versus a traditional counselor whose services are equally important. But we have I know for a fact in Forsyth County, the student advocacy specialist model has saved lives. A couple of things that are in here, I will thank you for the time, and I will say, and I'll defer to my colleague in a moment. I have people that I have spent years developing in threat assessment, in becoming experts in threat assessment. I have sent all across the country. And there's other agencies, other sheriff's offices, other police departments who equally do that. But we're putting the emphasis solely on GMA to create the tool that all of us will use. Now, there may be collaboration with GMA. And I have friends at GMA. GMA has some very smart and bright individuals at it. But there's no mandate for collaboration. In other words, GMA can create a tool, and this is the tool we'll use, but maybe it's not as good as the tool I use today. There needs to be some collaboration that's mandated in that, and it needs to be those stakeholders who are experienced in that, to that level. A couple of other things that I'll bring quickly to your attention, if I can, in the bill. If you'll bear with me, we just got the sub, so we were
take your time. Take your time. You may not get a Reese, but you can take your time.
Yeah, we were going through.
That's
okay. My wife told me I had to quit. One of the things I will tell you as we're talking about databases, one of the things I saw as we talk about felonies and things like that, we unfortunately make quite a few cases of misdemeanor terroristic threats, which are a threat to a school, but do not rise to the level of felony. I think it is important. One of the things that I've been screaming for years, and thank you again for taking this up, is we arrest someone for a school threat, no matter how serious it is. They go through juvenile court, they're adjudicated, and ask me what happened to them the day after that. I have no clue. I don't have a clue where they're at. I don't have a clue where they're going. I've had conversations with DJJ about tracking and accessibility to tracking, about how often they're reporting, but I have no idea when they're on juvenile probation. I have no idea when they get out of juvenile jail. That is a problem, because when we have someone who poses a significant threat to schools, that needs to be communicated. The database, things like that needs to be, but follow-up and monitoring of known offenders who, unfortunately, we're talking about youth who have been arrested for a school threat. I have no idea. And I will say no other sheriff, I believe I can stand in my place and say no other sheriff knows what's going on with those offenders after they've got out of juvenile jail or while they're on juvenile probation. But yet we have the responsibility of securing our schools along with our boards of education. That is a problem that needs to be addressed, and addressed as fast as we can, in addition to the things that the great things we're talking about here. I will also quickly say I'm on line 666 through 668. Official encounters with law enforcement. I agree that if we're going to report encounters of school-age youth to from law enforcement to school systems, we should do that. But we ought to have some common sense in it. Because as it sits now, it says any encounter, official encounter, where a child may have committed some offense. I will pose that if I caught a kid breaking a county ordinance of riding his bicycle on a turf field on one of our parks, that is an official encounter. Do we really want me reporting a kid who was riding his skateboard on the sidewalk or threw an egg at his buddy's house? There has to be some common sense. If it's an act of violence, if it's an act of animal abuse, if it's an act of weapons involved, those kind of things, domestic violence, all of those kind of things, make all the sense in the world to me. That it is so broad as it sits on its face that you will create a cumbersome mess, and it scares me that if we collect that much data, we're going to miss the important data. And so I think it makes sense to have some clarity in that section. Bear with me as we get through just a couple of more.
Yeah, and do you have a copy of the sub? I just want to make sure we're all reading from the same
I'm on
Bible here.
LC 492248S.
Perfect. Okay. Perfect.
It's longer in that section. I was just in the preamble, if you will, of
Perfect.
that section.
Perfect.
I do love on section 17 that you added the disruption of public schools as a standalone offense. That is a problem that we have faced continuously. So thank you for doing that. There's a section, and I'm trying to find it now, but I can paraphrase what it is. In the school threat assessment teams, and in one section, it refers to two things. One, that immediately upon deciding that there is a significant threat, a real threat, the threat assessment team, the local superintendent will reach out to the parents immediately. If we're in the middle of a criminal investigation that might deem that someone could have a weapon on campus or something like that, that term immediate. I'm not saying we should not, by all means. I have children, they're adults, but when they were youthful, I would want to know if something was going on with my child. But in the middle of an investigation, as it appears, it says immediately. Words matter, especially when they're codified in law. And so I would caution to think about that. Is there a better term? There's another section in which that same threat assessment board, it states that the school superintendent should be immediately notified and that the school superintendent will decide who is best equipped from the threat assessment or threat management team to deal with the incident. If it is a true threat to a school, that is a collaboration between nobody but the school system and law enforcement. The other parts will come on. And I trust my superintendent. We're dear friends, and I trust him. He's a great man. But do we want a school superintendent making what could de facto be law enforcement decisions? So I would, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to find that, I underlined it, but I'm sure the author knows the concept of what I'm saying. And I'm going to turn over, as I look for a couple more things, I'll turn over to Sheriff Hale. Thank you for hearing us.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So thank you very much for letting us be here today and speak with you. We've talked a lot with Representative Persinger, and being one of the agencies that responded to Appalachia, we greatly appreciate this legislation being brought up, and it's one of those things where you never hope you ever have to do it. So what we want to try to do is we want to try to prevent it, right? I think that's the common goal for everyone in this room right here, is to try to prevent this from ever happening again. And I think that one of the ways that we're approaching the behavioral threat assessment in this bill itself, a lot of it goes towards reactionary stuff. So trying to react to a threat being made, and then we're going to assess something. Well, the idea is we already have some laws that are codified with the child abuse protocol right now that pretty much bring to the table the people that have been working very hard on threat assessment and behavioral health. And so the idea is that we want to make sure that we don't exclude partners that we already have at the table that are able to do these things. I can tell you that we have several cases in my county. You can't quantify the number of active shooters that you've stopped from happening because you don't get stats on that. So the idea is to use our child abuse protocol to have the people that are mandated to be at the table in our multidisciplinary teams on a local level to make sure that those people who see these kids on a daily basis, whether it be the principal of a school, whether it be the counselor at school, whether it be the school psychologist or law enforcement, we actually even bring in animal control to our MDT team because of the fact that a lot of the precursors for someone who's going to have an act of violence at some point, they tend to do things when they're younger. We want to build resiliency into these kids, and we want to help them go down the right path, and we want to make sure that the people that are there to help them are the right ones to be at the table. Now, again, we're not here to take down the idea that there might be a state level team that does something. We just want to make sure that we don't exclude people from that list. And I think that we're working towards getting that done through that child abuse protocol and the list of people that are on that have to be at the table. I mean, it's all the way down to right now, the child abuse protocol, when you have a mandated reporter, there are certain people who are considered mandated reporters when it comes to child abuse. So those same people, if we can add to that list, whether it be animal control, whether it be firefighters, people don't realize that firefighters that aren't medically trained that answer calls, they answer calls at houses of squander all the time and have these kids that are there. Once we have those kids that have a grievance, okay, once we've created that grievance, now whether we did it or their parents or whatever, they have a grievance. Those are the ones that come to school and have problems. So when they see them at school, when they spend more time in our schools than they do at home for the most part during a school year, we want to make sure that those kids are seen, that they're heard and that they are actually directed towards resources that can get them steered to the right direction. Thank you.
My last 2 quick points, I promise I'll be brief. The ask that I would have would be that as these threat management tools, let's just use that as, can we use that as a broad term for the author and for this committee, would be include the Georgia Association of Chiefs of Police and the Georgia Sheriff's Association, who has many experts from their ranks in that decision making and in that development. Hey, more cooks in the kitchen sometimes is a good thing, and I believe that. So we're willing to work closely with GMA. We want good product, right? We want to keep our kids safe. There's nothing more important. I say it all the time. If I can't keep our kids safe, I don't know why I do this job. The other part that I will kind of lastly throw in as we finish up a couple of other things, school safety is this broad sense of what we do, but the database and the tracking of offenders from the law enforcement piece, I don't know of anything more important. Obviously, I'm excluding SROs in the schools and those kind of things, but the creation of a way to monitor known offenders. All of us, I'm sure Sheriff Hale can say the same thing. I've had people, unfortunately, I've had to arrest who were one step away from a school shooting, even in Forsyth County. What literally was actively seeking a gun and had all the planning, all the other things done. I don't know where that kid is today. That scares me as a sheriff, and that should scare all of us. That the database is more for threats and things that happen, so that we have, if a kid does, we can see he's got these other things, right? If it's a law enforcement matter, those kind of things. But the juvenile laws that exist today challenges us in knowing about offenders and sharing from information from DJJ to local law enforcement where a known offender lives. I know of nothing that is of greater importance than that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, Sheriff Freeman. And I saw the author and his colleagues taking a lot of notes here, and I know you guys are excellent partners, and so I think we'll work to incorporate a lot of those suggestions. And I just want to publicly thank you. I covered part of Roswell, and we were reminded all too well this week as to what you guys do, and you put yourselves on the front line to keep all of us safe. And so I just want to publicly thank you for that.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right. With that, we're going to get back to I believe I got one more student on here, and then we're going to go. I'm going to go to the top of the list and work on down. So if I've got Brooke Cheney with UGA Student Government.
Hi, so I'm Brooke. I went to high school in Atlanta and I go to UGA now. And I just had a few things that I wanted to comment on. So to the best of my knowledge, the school shooter at the Appalachia shooting, he'd only been enrolled in that school for, I believe, a week or so, give or take. And kind of one of the big things that you guys touched on is the collaboration with government agencies and how, given that there's over 200 some odd, it can sometimes be slow to roll. So my main, this is just more of a concern, is that I want to make sure that there's a way that things can happen fast enough, because this shooting obviously happened within obviously a week of him going to the school, and I think we all know it develops very quickly. So I think speed and timeliness is extremely important in this bill, and making sure the wording in the bill also goes with that. The second thing that I wanted to say, every year we go to the doctor for yearly checkups, and we do this for our physical body. We've been doing it since we were born. And I think, this is my own opinion, that we need something similar for our mental health. And in the wording, at least in the copy I have, on page 2, I believe, says on, I think it might be line 21 or 19 for you, but it says to require the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities to recommend. And I think that wording is key there. They're requiring a recommendation to do more screening assessments, but there's, to his point earlier, no teeth in it. So I think one area of concern for me is that I feel like these sort of assessments should be required and more standardized. And obviously, not every school has the privilege to have mental health advisors. And if that's the case, then teachers, I'm sure, would have no problem doing it. Their literal job is to care for these students, and most teachers I know love their job. So I think they would really not have a problem to have maybe semesterly meetings to just make sure. It's actually something that UGA has been doing. So my school advisor, or when I register for classes, she informed me that the counseling office at UGA has started to give them tips on how to recognize when people are in a slump, and it works really well for them, obviously, because they see you have to come for a semesterly meeting in order to register for your classes. So they have now taught these advisors how to be on the lookout for these types of kind of depression or abnormal behavior as a whole. So I think that's really important to not only get that training for our advisors, but also our teachers, and having a standardized baseline throughout semester to semester, or however they do it. Because as we know, especially in these very pivotal stage in our life, things change very quickly, and how someone is feeling 6 months from now, we sometimes cannot predict. So I just think it's very important, and I think it's very good, obviously, to look at historical behavior, but I also think that keeping track of the teachers doing it in-house, it'll also help with that sense of coordination, and to where they can personally react quicker. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. Brooke, real quick, what's your position on student government?
I'm the I'm the chair of the Committee for Student Experience.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Great.
I'm a
Thank
senator.
you. Senator.
Yeah.
We won't take offense to that. All right. I'm going to go back to the top of my list here. First come, first serve. Caitlin, I'm going to read the first three names I've got so folks can be on deck. And I'll remember, please, guys, I've got a bunch more to get through. So if you can keep it to 2-3 minutes, that would be fantastic. Caitlin Ward first, Mike Royal, and then Gretchen Walton is on deck. Caitlin, Carter Center Mental Health Program.
Good afternoon, Chairman and committee members. My name is Caitlin Ward, and I represent the Carter Center's mental health programs. At the Carter Center, we have prioritized school-based behavioral health by creating a collaborative consisting of Georgia Appleseed, Voices for Georgia's Children, and Resilient Georgia. As a member of the collaborative, we work independently and together to map availability of school-based behavioral health, including mental health promotion, early intervention, and services. And we research, develop, compile, and disseminate tools for those wanting to implement evidence-based behavioral health programs in Georgia schools. HB 268 is a great start to providing behavioral health services to Georgia's students. However, we would like to see the bill strengthened in a few different ways. We believe all schools must have Tier 1 mental health promotion, substance use, and suicide prevention services, programming for the entire school population. In Section 2, we would like to see that the budget will guarantee the mental health coordinator positions be fully funded by appropriations, as we have concerns this role will be absorbed by other staff members who may not have the bandwidth or qualifications, or it will not be fulfilled entirely if it is not funded. We also have concerns in Section 8 regarding the sharing of records and conditional enrollment, that schools can react to any level of evidence that a family has sought care for the emotional or psychological help of a child. Finally, in Section 17 and 21, students that are suspended while an investigation is underway for their actions are provided with counseling during the investigation. There is nothing in this legislation that speaks to continuing counseling or care once the investigation is concluded. Our concern is for the children who receive a long-term suspension or other behavioral actions, that they will not be given the resources to continue addressing their behavioral health and will have difficulty in reassimilating back into the classroom when their suspension is lifted. I would like to offer myself and the School-Based Behavioral Health Collaborative as a resource to you all while continuing to look at this issue. I look forward to working with you all on this legislation. Thank you.
Caitlin, fantastic. Thank you. Mike Royal says with himself here.
Well, my favorite title is former State Board of Education member, so I'm not on anymore. So, but if you'd have told me 14 years ago before I went on the State Board of Education, I'd be up here today talking to you about behavioral health, I'd have told you you're crazy. But this is something that's been going on, and I feel like I've been set up in a good way by the speakers before me, because what I was wanting to see in the bill, and thank you, Member Persinger and Chairman Irwin and the other members of the committee, and more, I think more so your wife. I know you're not offended by that, because in the substitute there's some very good changes in here, and I want to mention that because it codifies what some of the speakers have been in here talking about. Because I remember in 2018 when Chairman Jaspers and Senator Albers over in the Senate had study committees, and both of them came out with one of their top issues being behavioral health. And in this, and I'm going to stick my comments to Section 19 for the sake of time, and really in line 1068 where it deals with Code Section 20-2-1185 relating to the school safety plans, which Representative Wilkerson's already referenced here today. You'll see the addition in there to address behavioral health needs of students. That has been added to this bill, and I am very, very thankful that it has, because again, Chairman Jaspers, you've kind of made my pitch for me. We have talked about a process for years. We have developed processes around behavioral health and mental health for years. And I've also already made my point in this today. This bill is great. I've never seen a perfect bill come out, and I've been working with this for 20 years. But because of this, and then on page, the next page over on line 1080 talks about the school safety plan, but again on 1089 adds, and this is important, school safety plans shall. No ever time before has it said school safety plans shall include behavioral health. It will now if this passes as it's written, because line 6 says school safety plans shall address behavioral health needs of students and staff, utilizing guidance from the Department of Behavioral Health and Development and developing behavioral threat assessment with our partners at GMA. I've been watching and listening to what you get it. You even said in the joint session that one of the biggest issues is not the hardening, it's the process. This is the first comprehensive bill that I've really seen, that I've been begging for years, and it's there. Because we have to have an all-hands approach. Our sheriff talked about there's got to be hardened assets. I'm not only I've been on 14 years, I've got a daughter that's a teacher in a school. She had to use that button, and it was a true emergency, and within seconds she had help, thankfully. I live now in Oconee County. My sheriff was here, and I talked with him about teaming up. My daughter, my grandson, and my 2 new granddaughters live in Appalachia School District. So that phone call I got that day when that happened, Dad, what's going on? Without a comprehensive, cohesive plan that ties in shall include behavioral health, we're whistling past the graveyard. And I wanted to mention that to the people that are in here today that are talking about it is, because there was a great point. I was talking to one of your fellow legislators. I won't mention him in here. I didn't ask his permission, but he said the person that's in charge of behavioral health at that school also paints the lines on the field. That's reality. And the reality is, unless we have a comprehensive plan, GMA is going to be way better at coordinating safety than DOE. Love my DOE friends, but that's not what they do. And former Chairman Tanner is doing an omens job and gets it over at behavioral health. So I had an ask coming in, and I don't have it anymore because it's in the substitute, and I thank you. My ask now is to keep it a comprehensive plan that includes and focuses on behavioral health and mental health. Because one thing that I did learn over there in 14 years as chairman, vice chairman, chairman of budget twice, I pissed one chairman off and he made me chairman of audit, is the number one threat to these schools is within those 4 walls. It is, and the number one issue that's not even the threat. We see the threats on TV, but we don't see every day the children that are talking, that don't have anybody to talk to, like that poor girl in Cobb County, the 8th grader that took her life recently. They have no access, some of them, to anybody for help. This is a student achievement issue. It's an academic achievement issue. It is a mental health issue that they need help with. And please keep fighting for this, and please keep it a comprehensive bill on these threat assessments, on the behavioral health, and all this together. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mike. We've got Gretchen, Michaela, and Darlene on deck. Gretchen Walton with Cobb County Schools.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
As he said, I'm Gretchen Walton. I'm in my 25th year leading in Cobb County Schools as an educator and an attorney. And I'm here to share our thoughts on HB 268. We have been working closely with Gwinnett County Schools, and our initial feedback represents our district's collaboration and aligned concerns. First, we wanted to thank the committee and the House for their investment of time, energy, and resources in school safety and security. And we wanted to specifically thank Chairman Irwin for listening to the concerns and challenges particular to the state's 2 biggest school districts. We also wanted to publicly thank Michael Walker for bringing his expertise and experience to the drafting of this big bill, and Representative Persinger for carrying it. We look forward to working with you all in the future. In a state with the smallest districts having under 1,000 students and the biggest districts having over 100,000 students, we, or maybe more aptly you, have a great challenge in drafting operationally sound legislation. We have 3 overarching themes to our feedback that we have provided, but I wanted to publicly share on behalf of both Cobb and Gwinnett Public Schools. First, timeline. We ask that the local timeline for implementation throughout the bill lag exactly 1 year behind elements required on the state level. If you, and I think I've aligned these, I got the sub when I walked in, so I hope I'm correct. If you turn to page 42 and you look at lines 1105 to 1109, you'll see that it requires districts to update safety plans with behavioral threat assessment management plans by 6/1/26. Flip over 3 pages to page 45, where it says that the statewide process won't be developed until a month later, 7/1/26. We just ask that y'all give a look and make the timelines operationally functional for us. Literally just 1 year lag behind anything that's going to happen on a state level for local districts to have implemented. Our second overarching theme is ensuring that no part of the bill inadvertently compromise school safety. So I'll have you turn all the way back to the back of the bill, I believe page 57, in lines 1519 to 1527. So districts are going to receive, the school safety director in each district is going to receive a quarterly report, compliance report, which great. We're glad to receive that, and any partnership that we can have. It says that it will be shared in a public meeting. We ask only that places like that, where currently under open records law, we are protected from having school safety information made public, it clearly could show vulnerabilities, right? If you have a compliance report that's saying, hey, you're not doing it properly, that could show vulnerabilities. We don't want that aired publicly where we could make it an opportunity for a bad actor. So we're asking that be made executive session rather than in a public meeting. And there's some other examples in there. Our third and our biggest concern is that every part of this be operationally and legally possible. And I'm going to give you a couple examples of that. On page 52, if I can read my own writing, 1378 to 1389. This is a big one, y'all. And it came in as the number 1 for both Cobb and Gwinnett. It requires that all exterior doors or other access points remain closed and locked at all times. Cobb's high school with the most buildings has 22 separate buildings that children travel through during the school day. 22. Our high school with the fewest buildings has 4. And we have 17 high schools total, so you can imagine the total number of buildings. When you think about operationally, like when I ran a high school myself, right? Kids come in late, they get a pass from the front office. If you have 22 buildings, they may be traveling to 21 other buildings. If you say that all doors have to remain locked, you would either have to find 22 personnel who are not otherwise doing something to watch those doors, which there aren't 22 people just standing around, by the way. They are actually working, running the school. Or later, you see it suggested that there be digital access. I may be using the wrong word, but digital access. I met with all of our safety and security folks when I was reviewing this bill to put in one of those doors costs over $10,000. Plus, then, say our schools, we have about an average of like 3,000 kids at each high school, as does Gwinnett. You're talking about getting a system, a badging system, also for those kids. So add that cost and talk again 22 buildings. So we're talking no fewer than 22 doors. I'm just giving you the money, right? So this is operationally that one piece. It needs to be reworked. We would love to see it be that through school safety plans, then it would be individualized to the school, so that a school like our school that has 4 buildings, it's much more feasible. And then one with 22 is they're going to have to figure some things out, and it would force them to figure it out through the safety plan. So we do have an option for how we think you could fix it. Respectfully, our biggest ask is that legislators make a place at the table for local school districts, particularly districts like ours, like Cobb's and Gwinnett's, with our own post-certified police forces with over 200 officers between us, 18,000 employees in Cobb, and Gwinnett's 24,000 employees, and those are just of the school districts, and approximately 300,000 students between us. We just ask that as we have had the opportunity with Chairman Irwin, and we look forward to the opportunity of working with others, we will take the time to go line by line with anyone that's willing to listen to make sure this is a good idea, and we appreciate the work that you're doing on it. We want to make sure it works for school districts walking the first day that it is going to be in practice. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Gretchen. Michaela, Darlene, and Margaret with Paige, y'all are on deck.
Thank you, Chairman. First, my name is Michaela Arciaga. I'm the Georgia Advocacy Director for the Intercultural Development Research Association. We just go by IDRA. We are an education, research, advocacy, and policy civil rights nonprofit. We have a few concerns, but in general, we really support this bill and are excited in the direction conversation is going around how to make our schools safer. A couple of our concerns is that there is a very common conflation of discipline with security. And a lot of the records that are being referenced in this bill are discipline records to be used as an indicator of a security risk and labeling children as a threat. We're concerned in the ways that may exacerbate existing disparities in our school discipline processes and systems across the state. Right now, Black children are at 3 times the risk of their white peers to be disciplined in Georgia public schools. Kids with disabilities are 1.5 times as likely to be punished. And we want to just make sure that those disparities are top of mind and aren't made worse by building a system on top of them. I do think we see a lot of the intention and mindfulness that has gone into crafting this bill, and we do have some recommendations for this. I have seen throughout, we saw that some of the changes around the time of the records that are to be reported went from 24 months to 12 months in some. I think that's a great start. Our contention is that we want to give kids the chance, kids who are growing, whose brains are underdeveloped, who are learning right and wrong, and may make mistakes at 13 or at 7 that shouldn't follow them their whole lives. We want them to be able to grow out of the label. We recognize and appreciate that there is a dispute process in Section 8. I think in the new LC it is lines 517 to 524. Right now, there was not a lot of development around what that dispute process can look like. I know we also tapped into the Parents' Bill of Rights. We would really recommend maybe clarifying some language around what the dispute process for a parent and student who is trying to revise their record may go through, so that it is not simply dependent on the subjective opinion of a principal or their designee. We know that, like kids, principals are human, and sometimes kids get characterized in a way that is not always representative of their full potential. And so we want to make sure that we are giving options for kids to outgrow the behavior that they may make a mistake in their younger years and find success later on, so that we're not setting them up for failure. The second bit is just that we want to make sure we have some concerns that have been shared. Similarly, I think there are other folks here who are better qualified to reference them. But we do want to highlight just the sharing of records with teachers. As a former high school teacher in a low-income community where many of my students would have been on this list and I would have been receiving this report pretty regularly. We want to make sure that those teachers who are receiving these reports about students are given the support and training they need to build relationships with their students. I know there's a lot of that written in here, but even with Tier 1 and Tier 2 training, which we really want to commend and recognize, there are additional layers that can be added on top of that to help teachers feel prepared to support students who may be carrying a lot of experiences that have impacted their educational experience. We really appreciate Chairman Irwin and Representative Persinger's willingness to develop this bill and the Speaker's openness to really kind of overhauling the way we do discipline and safety in Georgia. This is really an exciting conversation, and we're grateful to be able to have been part of it. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you. Darlene with Georgia Appleseed. And then I've got Margaret and Sarah Hall up next.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Committee. I'm Darlene Lynch. I'm the Legal and Policy Director at Georgia Appleseed. Georgia Appleseed is a 20-year-old legal nonprofit. We have worked in the schools and with the schools for many years to promote school safety and school climate. We're excited about this bill too, and we really appreciate everybody who's worked on it, and it's clear that there's been a lot of thought and a lot of hours put into it, and there'll be many more to come. We think that it offers an opportunity to improve school climate as well as school safety, which is really the best way, maybe the only way, to prevent violence in our schools. I want to address just three issues: the school threat assessment provisions in Section 20, criminal penalty provisions in Section 17 and 21, and a small part of the record provisions in Section 8. I think those sections are still the same. The school threat assessment, we applaud the work going into mandating a statewide school assessment. We've seen how that's been powerful in other states, including in Virginia and Florida. Our legal team at Georgia Appleseed was called into about 10% of those threat cases in the first 2 weeks after Winder. We support kids and families who are facing expulsion for making a threat or for other reasons. And our referrals doubled during that period. And I will say that the majority of the cases involved non-threatening behavior, at least the ones that parents called us about. These were kids who turned a pipe cleaner into the shape of a gun. These were kids with disability and autism, a child who was a victim of sexual exploitation and trafficking, kids who made bad jokes, things that kids do. I think probably all of our kids have done at some time in their life. And the threat assessment is the key to weeding out those cases. The threat assessment is the way to focus our limited attention and resources on the kids who really need intervention. What I would suggest, though, is that we build the threat assessment into Georgia's already existing multi-tiered systems of support. Georgia should be rightfully proud in the Department of Education of the multi-tiered system, which looks at the whole child: academics, behavior, mental health, well-being. So in our experience, many of the threat cases tick all of those boxes. 1/3 of the cases were kids with disabilities who had IEPs or 504 plans. A vast majority of the kids so they would need academic support. A large number had trauma and mental health diagnoses. They would need mental health supports. And children with behavior issues need positive interventions, such as progressive forms of discipline, not automatic expulsion. So we, in a letter that we have sent to the Chairman Hilton and also Chairman Irwin, we've outlined the specific sections and how to integrate this into our already existing system. For instance, the multidisciplinary teams should have someone who's a special ed expert on that team. Compliance should be measured not just by locked doors, but by positive school climate. So are suspensions and expulsions going down? Are absences going down? What is the perception of the school climate? And DOE should be required to report that information Right now, they do have a statutory obligation to report it, but it hasn't been updated since COVID. We know that a positive school climate encourages kids to report problems to their teachers, and it is a way to get at problems before they end up in violence. The second thing I want to address is integrating the behavioral health threat assessment into criminal prosecution. That was done in Tennessee after they were overwhelmed with these minor cases when they also increased penalties on threats. What it says is a school would not refer a kid for an expulsion or for an arrest until completing the BTAM or the assessment and determining that the threat was credible. We would suggest the same language here. To respond to a question earlier, when a child is suspended for more than 10 days, they have a right to a tribunal with due process. They also have a right to be all their learning resources, so this is to the chairman who spoke earlier, to be given to them at home so that they are not suffering learning loss while waiting for this procedure to complete. So those are already in our law, and so we hope that that means the threat assessments will happen quickly so that these kids aren't suspended for that long of time and then would require tribunals and other things. The last thing I will talk about is the behavioral health screening provision that is in the records provision. Someone spoke about this earlier. If records are not timely provided when a child transfers, schools are authorized to do a screening. I think that the reason threat assessments works nationwide is they wait for the child to do something concerning. They wait for those red flags, and then they act. There is no research is unified that we cannot predict bad behavior or school shootings. It's not possible. I think Jima would agree. And so doing a behavioral health threat assessment simply because records are missing is not going to give you the information that you need as to whether that child is a safe addition to the school. So we would ask that section either be removed entirely or that the screening process really focus on the missing records. What did they say? Those kinds of questions, not delving into the emotional state of the child. So I think those are the ones that we want to offer up today. I agree with many of the comments that were made earlier, and we just really commend you for this really thoughtful approach. And at Appleseed, we are also here to be a resource and hope that we'll talk to more of you as this moves forward.
Perfect. Thank you, Darlene. Margaret, I've got you, Sarah, and Tremise. Good? Sorry. Is that you? Yes. I butchered it. Thank you. After Margaret, I got 9 more folks, guys. I've been secretly timing y'all here, and I said 3 to 5. Y'all been closer to the 5 than the 3. If we could get closer to the 3, that would be great. I do want to make sure this is a very important bill. I want everyone to have their say on this, but I want everybody to be able to talk. So in order to do so, let's keep it super tight.
Thank you, Mr.
Not to
Chair.
put you on the spot there. Yeah, Margaret, go for it.
I did time at 5 minutes, so I'll shave off some if I need to. But I do want to...
You get a Reese if you do.
Oh, well, my favorite candy, so I will speak fast, which is tough for a Southerner. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this legislation on behalf of 93,000 educators across the state. Like many of you, in response to our conversations with Appalachia staff and PAGE members across the state, we developed our 2025 legislative priorities around school safety. We see many educator-informed recommendations reflected in this draft, for which we are deeply grateful. Our most recent survey of more than 3,200 educators in 170 school districts, which was conducted after the shooting, contains some heartening news. Half of surveyed teachers indicated they do not have large concerns about safety in their own buildings, while 29% said they are moderately or extremely concerned about safety in their own buildings. However, there's more to this story, as there always is. Educators safety concerns are linked to student mental health and behavioral issues. Educators with a larger number of students with behavioral or mental health challenges are more likely to be moderate or extremely concerned about safety in their own schools than educators with fewer students of these challenges. Educators' concerns about safety are higher still when they consider school safety on the whole more broadly and not at their specific schools. Teachers indicated their schools use multiple safety strategies. More than 88% said schools or districts provide safety trainings, while 5% were unsure if trainings were held. The remainder said they were not trained. More than 90% of teachers responding reported their schools restrict access with secure entries and cameras. Approximately 80% of teachers said their schools have a panic alarm system, and 11% indicated their school currently uses metal detectors at entrances. 2/3 of surveyed educators reported their schools have a full-time SRO, and an additional 24% said their schools share SROs within the district. The distribution of school resource officers varies by school level. Obviously, more intensity of SRO staffing at high schools and middle schools than at elementary schools. Another point to consider from the survey. In 2023, you passed the Safe Schools Act, which created a school safety and anti-gang endorsement. Only 8% of surveyed educators on our survey reported that they are aware of this endorsement. However, when we informed them of it in the survey and asked if they would be interested in participating, 38% expressed interest in earning that endorsement. Paige has had recent conversations within the week with PSC, which is tasked with implementing this endorsement with the goal of helping more educators access in-person aspects of the endorsement training. And we look forward to working with other state safety agencies and DOE to make sure this happens. I do want to emphasize 3 top recommendations coming from Georgia educators regarding school safety. Additional mental health professionals to provide interventions or support to students, including school counselors, social workers, and psychologists. And really importantly, these top points. Comprehensive threat assessments of each school and a follow-up improvement plan with specific recommendations for improvement. Training and student information to identify students at risk of self-harm or harming others. Those are educators' top surveyed takeaways, and these things are reflected in this bill. Some additional items that educators would like us to consider. Ensuring all safety procedures, including entry and exit procedures, are consistently followed. Securing all buildings and campuses as well as recess, recreational, athletic, and parking areas. Ensuring students are safe in open areas during lunch, moving between buildings, and during athletic events. Educators also request additional safety enhancements that could be added as determined in a safety assessment. Those could be things like placing a school resource officer in every school, requiring clear backpacks, installing panic buttons and metal detectors, and installing barriers such as fencing, and replacing large windows that might, with a traditional glass, present a safety challenge. We'd be happy to provide the survey data to you, as well as the list of more specific recommendations regarding the bill that we provided Chairman Irwin yesterday. We also want to thank Representative Persinger for having a very long conversation with us about this bill earlier in the week. Most importantly, we want to emphasize that this bill reflects what our surveys of Georgia educators recommend in terms of educator-informed safety practices. We are grateful for the opportunity to weigh in and look forward with all of you to working with all of you on implementation.
Margaret, you weren't joking around. I got you at 4:56. All right. Someone shared with me an acronym the other day. It's called BLUF, bottom line up front. I like that. And that's what I'll tell the speakers. What's most helpful for us, your audience, is if there are specific ideas or recommendations you have to the legislation, hit that first. That's fantastic. With that, Ms. Sarah Hall.
Hi, everybody. So I'm first and foremost, I'm here as a parent. So I don't have specific recommendations, but I do have specific concerns. So my background is I also teach statistics and methodology, and I also, as another job, oversee how we integrate health and wellness across 5 university campuses. So I come to you as a statistician and data scientist, an educator, and as a parent of a child in a Georgia school. So what I want to talk to you guys about that specifically concerns, my specific concerns about this bill have to do with privacy issues. The way that the data is structured in the bill is very vague. There's a ton of concerns that I won't get into because I think some of the other colleagues and you all have addressed those specific data issues. But I think as a constituent, this needs to be said that there are some major issues with the way that you're looking at that D3 system. So I just want to address that first and foremost. Second of all, I want to talk about a story that I did happened with my child. We moved very briefly from Georgia into Tennessee. That move lasted about 3 months. It was right at the end of Christmas break, and so the decision was made that we would go ahead and register in the school, but that he wouldn't start school until after Christmas break. That allowed us to go through and get him re-registered with the classes that he needed, because when we switched school systems, some of those classes weren't offered at that time, those kinds of scheduling issues. According to this bill, my child would then be subjected to a behavioral analysis because it took so long for those records to get transferred over. So I think there needs to be some clarification around that, because my child is in a scholars program. He's a triathlete. He's not had any types of behavioral issues. But according to the bill, it would slow down him being able to get re-enrolled and reintegrated into the school, and would also subject him, according to the bill, to some behavioral stuff that I think would be unnecessary for my child, which speaks to what Appleseed was talking about. How are you all planning on determining, because it does not say anything in this bill, how you're going to, what is that behavioral assessment, and how does that work for kids who are not a part of that behavioral assessment? Who's making that determination? And I say that because the biggest experience that I wanted to talk to you guys about is the fact that there was a teacher at my son's school who referred to him on 2 occasions as a terrorist and a junior terrorist, because my son's skin color does not match mine and his ethnicity is different. And that in and of itself is a problem that I think comes through in this bill that isn't talked about explicitly, is that who is making this determination that these people are threats. And when you have a reporting system that allows just anyone to make anonymous reports, which is in the bill, you're opening that up to certain issues like what we experienced that was detrimental to my son. It cost him friendships, and it cost him a lot of trust in the school and the school system for something that was a teacher who made an inappropriate remark. So I think that needs to be considered in this bill when we're looking at how and who is doing that reporting. There needs to be some safeguards in place. I fully support that we need more mental health dollars and counselors and people supporting our kids. I can tell you that from the higher ed level, we are dealing with major issues that we wish there could be some collaboration on the high school level. So when we get these kids, they have a little bit better leg up. But I do have a lot of concerns about this bill, and I think there are some things that need to be addressed, specifically the privacy. And how are you going to protect children like my child from being subjected to a behavioral assessment and not going to school based on this 5-day records rule? And then also, how are you going to structure your reporting so that children who just happen to look different don't get categorized as some type of threat? And that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you. All right, guys, you guys are doing a great job. Here's what I'm going to do, because I've got members that have other meetings after this. We'll go ahead and do a 3-minute kind of shot clock, and I'll buzz in when you got a few seconds left, and that'll help us get through everyone here. You have a beautiful name, Trinice.
Yeah.
There we go. All right.
There you go. Thank you for that. So I also am here as a mom.
Thank you for your time today. My name is Trinice Good. I'm the mother of a high school senior in Cobb County. I specifically just want to express a concern that I had just through a personal experience that my son and I have had. Last year, my son was the junior class vice president at his high school. At the end of the year, he began running for senior class president. At the time, the movie Dune had recently been released, and it was the #1 movie in the country. For his campaign posters, he used an image from the movie and photoshopped his face onto one of the main characters. For those unfamiliar with the movie, it's set on a desert planet, and the characters wear protective clothing that covers the majority of their bodies to protect them from the sand and from the sun. The principal at his school apparently was not familiar with the movie. When the principal saw the posters around the campus, she was angered by them. She saw brown skin, she saw a desert landscape, she saw draped clothing, and immediately associated the posters with showing support for terrorism, Saddam Hussein, and ISIS. Her words. For this infraction, the principal had all of the posters taken down, threatened him with immediate removal from his student government position, and threatened to prevent him from participating in other student government activities in the future. I appreciate the goal of this bill to keep students safe at school. I want my kids and all of their friends to be safe. But threat is relative. My son's principal decided he was a threat. What would have happened if this bill had been in place? Would he have been suspended for this? Would he have been put on some list for monitoring? My son is not a threat to anyone. He simply made some campaign posters, but because of stereotypes held by school administrators with regard to Middle Eastern culture, it was perceived as threatening, and he was punished. This was a terrible experience for my son, for our family, and for other students at his school. Any recommendations for labeling a student as a threat have to be done fairly and without bias. You know, my son has a 4.3 grade point average. He's been accepted to DePaul, Brandeis, Auburn, LSU, Berry, Georgia Southern, Kennesaw State University. He has been offered significant financial scholarships for his academics. And, you know, this is the principal making these type of allegations against a 16-year-old kid that are totally unfounded. And, you know, I just want to make sure that this doesn't happen to somebody else.
Thank you.
And, you know, that any recommendations are just done fairly.
Thank you. Well, kudos to your son. He sounds like you're raising a very smart student there, so thank you. Ozka, Isabel, Cindy, Jennifer, Polly, Tanya, and Megan. That's the lineup moving forward. Ozka, am I saying that right?
Yes, you
Beautiful.
are.
Okay.
And I'm under 3 minutes. I already timed myself, so.
Love it. You get a receipt.
Hi, everyone. My name is Aska Mahmood, and I'm here today as a concerned parent of 2 Fulton County students. I have deep reservations about HB 268, and in particular about Section 21. As a parent, I appreciate that you're trying to keep students safe. However, because of the way that the Muslim community has been treated and profiled, I don't believe that this bill will protect my children and children like them. The bill fuses student safety with bias and profiling. It's normal for Muslim students in Georgia to get called terrorists, threatened with violence, and unfairly labeled as troublemakers. And you've just heard a couple testimonies. A few months ago, a family friend shared that his 6th grader son, who goes to my kid's school, was targeted by a group of students that routinely pick on him, who claimed to have overheard him talking about guns. A barrage of parents emailed the school to complain at the behest of those children. That student was sent to the school counselor, who found no concerns with this straight-A student and advised the principal as such. And even without any evidence, the school suspended the student for 3 days. The principal confided to my family friend that he had to do it to appease the other parents and knew the student was not at fault. Now, even worse, this incident made its way to the student's religious Sunday school at his mosque and further isolated and humiliated him within his faith community. I believe that this bill will only make things worse. Federal counterterrorism policy has already been used as an excuse to wiretap mosques. We've already been treated like criminals first and people second, and we have no reason to believe or to trust that an office housed within JIMA would treat our children with the respect that they deserve. And too often, families like mine speak up and are ignored, dismissed, or steamrolled by school officials who assume the worst before they even hear or ask about our side of the story. To me, HB 268 harkens back to post 9/11 surveillance, and data has shown that surveillance has never prevented a single act of domestic terrorism. It only further bolsters existing infrastructure to criminalize children like mine by introducing the possibility of felony charges or putting students in databases where they're labeled as potential threats. So I urge you to reconsider HB 268. Instead of criminalizing students, please invest in policies that uplift and support them. Every child, including my children, deserves to feel safe, valued, and protected in their school. Thank you.
You weren't kidding. 2 minutes and 37 seconds. Isabel, Cindy, and Jennifer.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Isabel Otero, and I am the Georgia Policy Director for the Southern Poverty Law Center. I became a mom in 2023, and while we're very far away from her attending high school, we are currently zoned for Appalachia High School. So I really do appreciate this body trying to address these issues. It is important to me personally, and to me as an advocate. I do want to echo some of the concerns that you've heard. I will keep it very brief because some of this has been mentioned, so I've been trying to edit as I go, as I listen. As the sheriff mentioned, establishing a school and student safety database combined with the expanded sharing provisions may result in some minor disciplinary issues being logged in as safety threats. And so those are not going to always be substantiated or credible. And as IDRA shared, data shows that disciplinary issues are not the same as safety concerns, and we don't want these things to continue to lead to over-policing of marginalized students, and especially students with disabilities, which is what we've seen. Our legal team ends up helping a lot of students who are going through the due process rights that they have in school with school issues. And in fact, because of Georgia's advocacy around school due process, even states like Alabama have adopted those things. And so we don't want due process for students to be diminished by a bill like this. This bill also grants schools access to records from DJJ or DFACS beyond what's currently permitted. And without some of the clarifications that others have mentioned, we're worried that this could lead to discriminatory treatment, where students are re-entering schools from institutional placements. And this may actually violate, the way it's written now, may actually violate disability discrimination laws at the federal level. HB 268 does lack some clarity in its definitions for key terms like substantiated threat of school safety or credible accusations, and without the clarity and precise language, we might be leading to some suggestive or potentially biased decision making, and we don't want those to be labeled as threats without the due process that is necessary. The bill does reference disciplinary code sections that include a broad range of student behaviors and not just things that are violence, like the sheriffs were talking about, and this could, once again, mean that minor infractions are swept into a system where we're not actually able to get to the actual threats that you all are trying to address. We don't want this to either stigmatize students, keep them out of school for a long term, or harm their ability to get long-term opportunities in the future. So without some stronger due process protections for students, without preventing some wrongful reporting and ensuring that students and parents are notified before any disciplinary actions, we're not going to be able to support the bill as is written, and we do want to work with all of you and with the author to try to provide some suggestions, and we will do that. Like I said, school safety is really a top priority. We do want to ensure that these things are done in a way to protect students from inadvertently criminalizing them.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Thank you. Sydney Battles with the People's Agenda.
She had to run to another meeting. She might not be here.
Okay. If she comes back, please let me know. Wave at me. Yep. Jennifer Lopez, GLA HR.
Good morning or good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Jennifer, and I'm with the Georgia Latino Alliance for Human Rights, also known as GLAR. I'm here today to urge you all to reconsider HB 268. School safety is a priority, but this bill doesn't really address it. Instead, it focuses on other things, such as the creation of a new office, a whole new database that is accessible to law enforcement, including GBI, among other things. The way that the bill is written is concerning, as there is a lack of transparency and accountability. And the new office that is created within this bill has the single authority to create these procedures and definitions, like what is a threat and the role of law enforcement, but there is no public input process or a way for the public to engage in this process, and I believe that is very crucial. After all, it is the public's children who are subject to the office of the database, and their child's information goes into it. And additionally, this creates a privacy concern for students, since we don't know the scope of who all will have access to the database, as the office will specify who are authorized personnel and who does have access to that database. I would also like to highlight how our Black and brown youth are already more likely to be disproportionately criminalized, and this bill would only add more fuel to the flame. Our schools, especially those that already have limited amount of resources, do not need more of this police presence. They need more resources that address the root causes and assist their students and not cause more harm. I see in the older version, the original version, Section 2 of the bill does mention a qualified mental health coordinator. However, the bill does not mention what constitutes as qualified. In much of Section 2, the bill is quite vague and broad. More details regarding how the bill will be put into practice is left unknown, since all the procedures and definitions are to be determined by the new Office of the Safe School. Trying to keep it brief, again, most of the concerns that we had, most of the people brought forth. Wanted to close this out by just mentioning that our youth do not deserve to be constantly policed in a place that is supposed to be seen as a resource, a place where most teachers are trusted adults and lunches are the first meal that the students receive. So again, we at GLAR urge you to reconsider HB 268. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. We've got Polly with Polly McKinney with Voices for Georgia's Children.
Thank you.
Yeah, please hand it here. I am starting your clock, so.
Hi, Polly McKinney. I'm Advocacy Director of Voices for Georgia's Children, and thank you for the opportunity to comment on House Bill 268. We went through the bill in great detail, and we have a few suggestions that we on the old LC number, because I didn't have the new one, that we've lined out. A lot of people have already mentioned them, but we're generally supportive. We appreciate the work of this committee a great deal. I'll highlight just a couple of thoughts that are not in this document that is being handed out, and one of them is to the sheriff's point earlier, looking at existing committees that are already statutorily required to meet on things like attendance and child abuse prevention, and seeing how those committees, I don't know how much dovetailing there can be, but it tends to be a lot of the same agencies overlapping, and so that might be something to think about. In particular, the Student Attendance and School Climate Committee has a lot of same members, and the Child Abuse Protocol Committee, and those are, and you already know this, but the 20-2-690.2 is student attendance, and 19-15-2 is the Child Abuse Protocol Committee. So that might be worth a look in terms of setting up these meetings. And the other stuff with the adjudicated guilty is one of the things I'd like to point out. We would actually say adjudicated delinquent, and that's a few spots in the code. Also, we tried to make some suggestions around children with disabilities or diagnosed mental health provisions. So happy to try to take questions, so I don't have the new version in my brain yet.
Well, we're going to go to the next speaker, but if the committee has questions as we work through it, we will call you back up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tanya Winters, the National Parents Union. And I did not know we had a union. I think that's great.
I'm going to stay within my time because I want my Reese's. Good
See,
afternoon.
with a little motivation. Yeah, go.
Good afternoon. My name is Tanya Winters. I'm the Georgia State Director for National Parents Union. We are the independent, united voice of the modern American families and parents. I'm the proud mother of 3 young adults who graduated safely from Georgia Public Schools. And I thank you all this morning, the committee, or this afternoon, for hearing us and having this meeting. My heart goes out to all of those who have been affected by school shootings, and more recently here in our home state of Georgia. As a 20-year veteran educator and community advocate, I'm here to express my concerns about HB 268. While student safety is crucial, this bill raises concerns regarding data privacy, increased surveillance, over-policing, and exclusionary discipline practices on already marginalized students. Not to mention that the average profile of a school shooter is found in the so-called safest schools with a socioeconomic status that usually insulates them from detection. Research shows that discipline is often applied to nonviolent behaviors and disproportionately impacts students with disabilities. Instead, I propose we invest in preventative strategies that build stronger relationships among parents, students, and teachers, and invest in tools that protect student privacy and ensure law enforcement only accesses student data with a court order for actual threats. In conclusion, while I fully support the efforts here today to create safe learning environments, this bill introduces a few more harm than solutions by emphasizing exclusionary practices, creating more unnecessary busy work for school administrators and law enforcement, taking time from actual threats and protection of community. I respectfully urge the committee to reconsider the outline approach in this legislation and instead invest in policies that genuinely address the root cause of school safety. And in the spirit of the sheriffs that were here, of having more cooks in the kitchen, I'd like to see parents, school counselors, and teachers brought into the conversation, and with National Parents Union leading the forefront to create listening sessions, focus groups, and seats at the table for other parents. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Megan Gordon with CARE Georgia.
I will be brief. Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Gordon. I'm the policy director at the Georgia chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations. We, among other things, provide free legal support to Muslims who are facing discrimination because of their faith. And as part of that, parents call us when their kids are being treated unfairly by school administration. The sheer quantity of calls that we get around this leaves me with the unshakable conclusion that the stereotype of Muslims, even kids, as dangerous terrorists is alive and well in our school system, and that if HB 268 is passed, this bias is going to be baked into the system created in Section 20, because I think it's Section 20 and maybe not in the new sub, to the deep detriment of Muslim students. I'm going to tell you one story, cut one out for time. I have a lot more that I could share. Adam was talking to his bus driver one day, and the bus driver shared that they would love to put up Christmas music, Christmas lights, and play music on the bus, but they would get in trouble with their supervisor because that's not school policy. Adam jokingly goes, "I'd handle them," and plays a gunshot sound on their phone. The bus driver goes like, "This is not okay. We don't do this." Adam immediately learns his lesson and apologizes. Everybody goes home, everything is fine. That night, Adam's parents get a call saying that he's being given OSS until he can go before a district tribunal because he is being investigated for threatening a district employee. At that tribunal, he was found guilty and given OSS for the entire school year. He is sobbing, his parents are sobbing, he's a straight A student, it's a mess. After that punishment was handed down, the principal eventually convinced the school safety officer to lower this punishment to 7 days of OSS, and Adam is not allowed to ride the bus for the rest of the year. I have a lot more stories. Stories where teachers call students terrorists, stories where bullies falsely report that a Muslim student is going to do something violent and the Muslim student is punished, stories where Muslim students are bullied and their reports are ignored. My concern is that if this bill is a law, we're baking this bias in and raising the stakes. Would Adam be in the S3 database? I understand that there's a threat assessment team. I respect that this is a very well thought out bill. But when we have so many examples of bias, it doesn't really make me feel any better when we have so many examples of bias from one member of that threat assessment team. What might make me feel better is if we can find a way to build in some sort of cultural competency on that team. But right now, there's simply no trust between the Muslim community and any sort of government body that's there for our safety because of the way that Muslims have been treated historically and continue to be treated by almost every position of authority. This is a thoughtful bill with a good goal. I respect this, but because of the unique circumstances of the Muslim community, we have no reason to trust that this is actually going to protect our students.
All right, thank you. Thank you to all our speakers. This is subcommittee where we get a lot of this feedback and work done. I want to appreciate everyone for being thoughtful, respectful, and giving us a lot of great data and ideas. So thank you guys for what you've done on this. With that, I've got my button lit up to my right here. Representative Cox.
Yeah, I would like to make a motion that HB 268 do pass.
All right, we have a motion, do pass, and a second. Now is the appropriate time to have a discussion on the motion by the committee. I'm going to recognize number 2 down to my left, Representative Wilkerson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My constituents will continue to get their money's worth. I have a question. We have received a significant amount of good feedback and well as concerning feedback. As this bill moves forward to full committee, will there be a chance to make any changes, or are we basically saying we listened and we're moving on? But that's what I'm trying to figure out, because usually we make all these changes in subcommittee, and I think from the privacy issues, from the fact that the bill, it doesn't sound like we had a lot of input from the metro area. And I just want to make sure that we have some type of continuing conversations, or is this bill done and we just got to listen for a couple of hours?
No, I mean, you're a seasoned veteran here. We can offer amendments here today and consider those, and then I'm sure the bill's author would be happy to partner with you offline and others, and I know he's going to do that and operate in good faith. So this is by no means the end-all, say-all, but we want to get our work done here today. So another question down to my left. I'm going to get it right. Representative Olalier.
You got it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for you, Representative. Looking at similar types of legislation in other states, if they exist, there's been a lot of feedback around providing more specificity around what constitutes a threat. There's a lot of consternation and emotion around the profiling of students, but more importantly, we want to get to the threatening cases. We don't want so many of these smaller non-threatening cases to flood the market and prevent us from actually responding quickly to those threatening cases. So is there any reference out there with more guidance and specificity on what a threatening case is that can help our teachers and our school support staff identify those?
I think the thought process was to allow during the policy phase of if this passes and working with schools like Oconee and Cherokee that are currently doing this, they have those systems in place, and those behavioral threat assessment teams, that's what they're doing. Is they're evaluating, and then is it credible threat to push it up, or is it not? That happens at the school system level.
Yeah, my only fear is that we're talking about dozens of systems with their own, it's so subjective, right? So you have school systems and practitioners who are going to get it right and those who aren't, but they're all feeding into the same system. So without a little bit more guidance, that's my only concern. I love the intent behind the bill. It's something that we definitely have to get done right in centralizing the information, but most importantly, ensuring that there's a level of consistency with what is threatening versus what is non-threatening coming into the system would be helpful.
If I could say something that would help, in response to some of the speakers we've heard today, the combined findings of federal authorities, academic experts, is demographics have no bearing on school threats, and there is no profile for someone who's going to be a school shooter present a threat to school. So I think those concerns about that were expressed today are very valid, but they are not a part of our training curriculum. In fact, what we talk about is not the aspect of the individual, it's their behaviors, what behaviors they're exhibiting, and the training that we already have that's available. I was disappointed to hear only 8% of the educators knew about it, but it's on Georgia Learns. All of the teachers can take it right now. It talks about the pathway to violence. Someone has a grievance, then it turns into a plan, then they start taking action towards that plan, and then they have a timeline. And so it's that behavior we're looking at, not anyone's their appearance or their background. And I think that training and education will help.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I'm speaking less to how the kid looks, and just the sheriff mentioned this earlier, kids are going to be kids, right? Mm-hmm. So riding a skateboard going to get me on the list because I've, by statute, broken the law? It's so subjective, and most educators are going to get it right. In cases where you're really leaving it up to them to make those decisions, how does that help or potentially impair our ability to move quickly and get to those threatening cases? Thank you. That's all I got. Thank you. Right. I appreciate it.
Members of the committee, I just want to recap our current posture right now. We've got a motion on the table, a second. Now is the time where we would entertain any amendments. I think we've gone through a pretty good hour's worth of question of the author, and so I see a lot of lights here, which is great. But if you're lit up for just a question, I'd encourage you to chat offline. Now's the time to offer up amendments if you have any. And with that, I see a light still going, number 27 to my right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Referring back to line 494, I was talking over there with Michael and Letch Council, and we were working on an exact phrase. I'll see if that was ready. I'm turning it over to him.
On page 19 of LC 492248S, lines 494 through 498 would be replaced with the following. If the receiving school does not receive such students' critical records from each sending school, such student attended during the previous 24 months, the receiving school shall be authorized to temporarily assign such student to an alternative placement, including but not limited to virtual instruction, until such critical records are received or the screening assessment provided for in subsection I of this code section is completed.
Thank you. That's my side.
So you're making a motion.
Making a motion to do that.
All right. So second. Okay. All right. Let me consult my attorney over here. Hold on. Thank you. All right. So now any discussion on the motion to amend? Yes. Okay. They're getting their money's worth. Number 2.
Thank you, but they're always good points. So
that's up to the chair to decide.
My only concern, I've run into the situation before, is that there's no timeline on this. So basically, you could wait a student out in a school system for a month, 2 months, the rest of the school year. So would there be an opportunity to amend this motion to say up to a certain period of time?
In my sense, no, because I've been in that situation before where after a while it goes back to the parent has to get the paperwork if not.
So I've had a parent
had
call me.
situation- Yeah, and
yeah.
we've overcome that situation before in a school setting where it didn't drag out for an attorney or whatever else. So if both the school and the parent will do their due diligence, the paperwork will arrive. And I've had cases where the student needed to be in a virtual school, and it was a good thing we put that student in a virtual school.
So here's what we're gonna do, and because I got an idea for you, number two. I'm gonna go ahead and call to question the amendment. We'll vote on that, and then if anyone would like to amend the amendment, I'll entertain a motion for that. Good idea. Would you mind reading that amendment once more for?
Yes, lines 494 through 498 would be replaced with the following. If the receiving school does not receive such students' critical records from each sending school such student attended during the previous 24 months, the receiving school shall be authorized to temporarily assign such student to an alternative placement, including but not limited to virtual instruction, until such critical records are received or the screening assessment provided for in subsection I of this code section is completed.
Thank you. I'll call to question. All in favor of the Townsend amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign?
Nay.
Motion passes. 18, what do you got for me?
So I do have an amendment a friendly amendment that I'd like to propose in reference to children who are diagnosed with a disability, IEP or 504, that inside of their threat assessment that the appropriate professionals from their school would be included so that we know for sure that their assessment of their needs are properly taken into account.
Can you reference
Lines 871 to 885.
a page number, if you got it? Yeah.
871 to 885.
871 to 885. What's the page number?
33.
33. And can you, Representative Glaze, do you have the language you're proposing?
So the language would be for students who have a 504 or an IEP plan that their assessment would include their educators from the local school system, and that would help as a guardrail to make sure that all of their rights are adhered to.
Isn't one on the committee already? Would one already be on the committee? Special ed person, I would assume.
Hold on, I'm gonna.
I don't.
And that's already required for anyway. Anything dealing with a child with a special IEP or anything else, that's part of the requirement.
Okay.
So my suggestion was that from the local school system, where the IEP and the 504B plan has been written to make sure that the guardrail is that one of those from that local school is on that assessment team. So you believe this language covered
That's
that?
currently in.
If you can speak in, can you grab the mic? Yeah.
I mean, that's currently required by law, if I'm not mistaken.
On the local threat assessment, it's not in the law yet.
But
if the lady would come to the mic.
My local expert.
If you could just speak to it real quick.
So if a student will be out for 10 days or more, there is a manifestation that does include those experts that know the student and the data behind the student.
Doesn't sound right, but someone can help find that for me so that I'll know that I'm getting accurate information. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Well, Representative Glaze, why don't you? I'm sensing a group here. Why don't you guys connect? I think we're covered, but yes. All right. What is, all right. So I've got a motion from Representative Glaze. All right, we're going to give them a 30-second time to confer. Good time for a bathroom break, guys. Or a recess break. I got you, baby. Pass this down to him here. No.
I've come to get a recess.
Thank you very much.
Give you a little bit of a sugar pill.
All right. Hey, guys, here's what we're going to do, because this is taking a little bit longer than I thought it would. I'm going to ask Representative Glaze, unless, Michael, if you got language. All right, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. We can do substitutes, and we can have a substitute in full. If you guys could talk offline, I just want to keep us on track. Does that sound good? All right. All right. Resume positions, everybody. I'm going to let you back in your chair. Michael, do you have anything to add or say? Good. Okay.
Yes.
Good. All right. Nope. With that, we have a motion do pass on the table. I'm going to. This is why you hire good people. Representative Glaze, would you like to withdraw your amendment for the time being?
Yes, withdraw amendment.
Perfect. Thank you. She says we can vote now. All right. Representative, again, as a dad of 3 kids, I think every single day about school safety when I drop my kids off. And I've seen us do a lot around school safety down here at the Capitol. This is, I think, one of the most meaningful things, big step we're doing. Thank you for what you've done. Members, all in favor of due pass of House Bill 268, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, like sign? Congratulations, bill passes. All right, Members of the committee, we're adjourned. Goodbye. Have a great weekend. Valentine's Day. Don't forget, gentlemen.